The way that a content type stores individual pieces of data is through the use of fields, and a couple of fields get added to our content type when it's created initially. Let's go ahead and take a look at those. So we have our new tour content type here. We've taken a look at the edit form. Let's go ahead and look at manage fields. I'm going to go ahead and click on this. This displays an interface that shows us what fields have been added to our content type already, as well as an interface for adding additional fields. Let's go ahead and take a look at the columns and what they mean real quick. First, we have our label, which is the label or title that will display above the input in order to give us some information about what the input is for. The name, which is the machine name for this field. The field is a description of what this field type is. If you remember from working with WebForm, where we could add a text field or a text area or a date or a time field, fields in content types are very similar. We can create a field based on a certain type of input, and then we can adjust that with a settings form. Some fields allow for multiple types of display for the actual interface for adding the content, and those can be chosen through the widget column. A lot of the types of fields only allow for one widget, but some have multiple, and you can select which type of widget you want to use. You can also change which widget is used later on, even after you have data. Whereas some of the settings for the field, you can only set during the initial phase of creating the field, and then once it has content associated with it, you can't change it without compromising the content. And then finally, we have the operations column, which gives us actions that we can take on the field, including editing it and deleting it. So we have two fields that are built into a content type when it's created initially, the title and the body. And we change the title of the title to event name. And the label for the body is body, but it might make more sense to have this read description instead, since really what we're adding is a description of the upcoming tour. So let's go ahead and click the edit link next to the body field here. And let's look at the settings that we have available to us for editing this field. We have the label here, which is currently body, but we want to change it to description. So let's go ahead and do this. We can set this to be a required field, so somebody has to add some input into it in order to submit it. It seems like at this point, since we're just filling in content, it would be good to allow for empty text, so let's go ahead and leave this unchecked. The number of rows that display by default for the text area, 20. We may want to change this later once we have a sense of how long the descriptions are going to be. We can set whether this content is going to be plain text or filtered text. Filtered text allows us to select a text format, and we haven't covered text formats yet, but as I promised before, we will definitely get to that. The help text for this, which is some description text that displays below the input, we'll go ahead and leave that blank for now. I'm going to scroll down. The summary input, if you read the help text, tells us that we can set this in order to allow the content creator to define an explicit summary that's not necessarily part of the main text. So we saw how the summary was taken out of our text when we created our homepage content, and the homepage pulled out that summary for its list of content. So it's that same kind of system. When we created that piece of content, we didn't explicitly state a summary, but it got pulled out from the main content, and we can set here whether we want to allow people to do that. The downside would be that somebody could put something in the summary that doesn't have anything to do with the body, but we trust our content editors, so we're going to go ahead and leave this checked. We can set a default value for this input. We want to leave this blank. I'm going to scroll down. And finally, and this is kind of a cool feature of these fields, we can set the number of values for a field. So for this, we would want just one. It makes sense just to have a single main content section. However, if we had multiple guides associated with a tour, for example, we may want to have multiple inputs to allow the adding of multiple tour guides associated with the tour. So this number of values could be useful for other types of fields. Let's go ahead and save the settings for this field. And then let's take a look at how our tour ad form displays now that we've changed the title of that field. I'm going to go ahead and click Add Content in the shortcut bar. And we have a new item listed here, Tour. Let's go ahead and click Tour. And here we have our input form. We have event name showing for the title, and it's required. And then we have description showing for the body. And notice we have this Edit Summary link, which is what displays when we have the Edit Summary checkbox checked in the field settings. And as we scroll down, we see that these are the only two fields, so there's a few more fields that we'll need to add.